Okay, so we're ready, Ira?
Yes, welcome everyone. We're all set to begin.
Okay. So good morning in North America, good afternoon in Europe, good evening in Israel. So I'm Charles Small, I'm the director of ISGAP. I'm speaking to you from Oxford, England. And it's really an honor and a privilege to have with us Fiamma Nirenstein. And before I introduce Fiamma, I just want to say that we've sent out an announcement, and as many of you must know, today is Yom HaShoah, and at 8 p.m. in Israel, 6 p.m. in Europe, 5 p.m. in the United Kingdom, and at 1 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States and Canada, you can join the Yad Vashem ceremony commemorating the Holocaust and the murder of 6 million innocent Jewish people. And you can join this year. It's going to be, because of the virus, it's going to be a very solitary event for the first time ever, but we can join in as a community through the internet. So I encourage you to join. If people have never seen the ceremony, I'm sure it'll be very poignant, and it's a very important commemoration, especially as we speak today with Fiamma. So today, Fiamma Nirenstein is going to speak. The title of her talk is called Antisemitism in the Time of COVID-19, The Real Danger and the Real Fight. Fiamma is a well-known journalist and author. She recently, about 18 months ago, published a book with ISGAP on the Ayatollahs in Iran. Fiamma is a research scholar at the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs and works closely with Dori Gold and the very prestigious and accomplished team at the JCPA. She's a senior researcher there. Throughout her career, Fiamma has been a journalist and as an expert on the Middle East, and she taught Middle East studies at Luis University in Rome. She's written many books on the Middle East, anti-Semitism, and issues of anti-Zionism. She's a regular columnist for the Italian paper Il Giornale, which is based in Italy, and a regular contributor on radio and television, particularly in Italy, on policy and Middle East affairs. She writes regularly for the JNS. She's also been a member of the Italian Parliament and was the deputy president of the Commission of Foreign Affairs in the Parliament and a member of the Council of Europe. She's also been the director of the Italian Institute of Culture and is also currently a member of the Israel Council on Foreign Relations of the World Jewish Congress, and she's also a member of the board of NGO Monitor. So it's really a distinct honor and pleasure to have Fiamma, and we've, over the years, I just want to say that we've worked with Fiamma on her book and also on different programming, and she's always welcomed us to her very important project she had in Italy. She invited us to the Italian Parliament on several occasions, and she's been a major force in Italian and European politics and getting the IRA definition approved and being at the forefront really of the struggle against global anti-Semitism. So welcome, Fiamma.
Charles, thank you so much for your very kind introduction. It's really an honor to be here with ISGAP and to be here in this very special day when we remember our dearest lost in the Shoah. It's proper and necessary to point out that conspiracy theories have always been at the background of any persecution of the Jews. And accusations that appear absurd and that of moral depravity and spreading plagues for one's own sake, nowadays they come back. It's so hard to see them coming back in time of coronavirus, when Israel, as usual, and all the Jews all over the world try to help whoever they can, and mostly here in the area in the Middle East, they do it as usual. And still they receive the worst of all the accusation. It's easy, in fact, to see how the coronavirus pandemic has sparked anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. They are part of the classical paradigm, and the Jews have again become what the Italian writer Alessandro Manzoni called the plague spreaders of 1630. It has happened all along the time, so since the antiquity, all the Jews were blamed, and as they are today for COVID-19, for these outbreaks, but it could have been syphilis, tuberculosis, parasite. The bibliography is unfortunately very vast. The late scholar, the best of anti-Semitism, Robert Wistrich, outlined that the conspiracy theories existing within the Arab world includes theft, rape, the slaughter of Gentiles, and an alleged secret coalition like the Elders of Zion. Today, however, these accusations are directed at Israel. This is the main point of my speech here. Doctors, soldiers, and nurses who fly across the globe to help during emergencies such as earthquakes, tsunamis, and cyclones are described as vampires who go with the purpose of stealing human organs for profit. I myself, as a journalist, remember Hillary Clinton being totally shocked when she went to Gaza for the first time, and Suha Arafat told her that the Jews were poisoning wells. She didn't know what to do, and she had to listen to that. Exactly. And they were less astonished as when the EU Assembly had to listen to Mahmoud Abbas saying that there are rabbis that tell their people, the Jews, to poison the waters of the Palestinians. So there was a standing ovation for that. And, you know, it's really hard. Now the accusation coming from the PA are that Israel is spreading COVID-19 and refusing to explaining the Palestinians how to take care of it, even if they invite, I mean, the Israeli doctors, and Israel in its own invites the Palestinian doctors, included those from Gaza, and brief them about all the preventive measures and help them. And Israel, they say, are sending Palestinian workers back to territories in order to spark a massive surge of infections. And the more abstract but sensitive accusation is that the pandemic is Allah's answer to Trump's recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Such accusations are not an academic exercise in anti-Semitism, but rather part and parcel of an elaborate campaign to delegitimize Israel. The state of Israel lies at the heart of this anti-Semitism. We see here that even the most traditional demonization, with its blood libels and age-old anti-Semitic tropes, finds expression in the modern Israel-centered narrative. Its rhetoric continues to include the territories and settlers. The Palestinian Authority spokesperson Ibrahim Milchem said, quote, Israel is not exporting the virus to the Palestinians. They are agents of this epidemic, which is called the occupation. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh not only has insisted upon this lie, but has also accused settlers and has claimed that Israel soldiers are trying to spread the virus by spitting. Think how disgusting is this accused, by spitting on the door handles of cars driven by Palestinians. The underlying message is a populist invitation to stick to the false message that imperialist state, the occupied imperialist state of Israel, which represents perfidy, corruption, and the imperialism of the Jewish people in all, is responsible for all of the world ills and plays upon them in order to seek dominance. It is the idea that Israel is a regime occupation. This is discussed very well in the new volume edited by Dan Diker, Israelophobia in the West, by Yassa Kasher. It's a volume by the Jerusalem Center of Public Affairs that invites this, and this idea of regime of occupation invites all kinds of negative views connected to anti-Semitism. It expresses negative opinion from a moral, religious, or ethical perspective, affirms a discriminatory attitude in historical perspective, and refuses any comparative views. There is no legitimate criticism here because, first of all, it's all based on lies. And secondly, because it's used the idea of occupation incorrectly without engaging in any historical truth. Therefore, it promotes not only mythological anti-Semitism, but also politically motivated anti-Israeli actions. Take the following prime example. which is not, we have to work a little bit on it to understand exactly what it means. Nikolai Mladenov, the UN Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, during a session in which he praised the action of Israel in helping the P8 to fight coronavirus, underlined out of the blue that not unilateral actions, namely the annexation that the US peace plan foresees, but cooperation is needing to fight the virus. Now, there is no connection between the two subjects. Still, just because someone underlined the needs of the Palestinians, the need to help the Palestinians, they need not automatically adhere as he did to the Palestinian narrative, but he did. This appears to be a political byproduct of the coronavirus campaign. There have been numerous other cases of anti-Semitism in recent weeks that have not failed to mention Israel. It has happened also in France and Germany. Iran has accused the US and Israel of spreading the virus, and so too have Palestinian newspapers such as Al-Qud and Al-Hayat Al-Jadida that on March 16 published a cartoon depicting the coronavirus as a large tank pursuing a Palestinian carrying an infant. This is today's anti-Semitism. This is the anti-Semitism that we discuss day after day. Even if these conspiracy theories about Jews belong to the deep history of anti-Semitism. But this is the reservoir of stereotypes and mendacities that belong, and now I come to my other point, to the right and to the left. Still, this is something that I really want to underline. There is a difference in their degree and in their danger, and therefore in the scale of priorities for learning how to fight anti-Semitism. Why that? Because nobody in the civilized world will agree, not governmental institution, not international institution like the European Union or the United Nations, nobody in relevant position of power with the thesis that the Jews voluntarily spread coronavirus for their own interest. This is condemned as a shameful expression of Nazi fascism, anti-Semitism. And so the Chancellor Angela Merkel, like Emmanuel Macron, or the President of the Italian Republic, Sergio Mattarella, they all will condemn this point of view. They have condemned this point of view. Nowadays, but there is a sophisticated way of perpetuate anti-Semitism through clever propaganda against the Jewish people in its most important expression, the State of Israel. And you know that anti-Semitism becomes dangerous when it becomes an organizing principle of society, an ideological term that intersects with basic issues which leaders and relevant groups of people consider important. The idea that COVID-19 is spread by the Jews is obsolete. Easy to counterattack. No one that holds important responsibility will share it. But when more reasonable arguments are attached to that, are presented alongside it, for example, the idea that infection is connected to the bad situation of the Palestinian because of the occupation, then it may be translated into more responsible political language and it can become very dangerous. By suggesting that the occupation brings bad consequence, bad economy, poor hygienic condition of Gaza, among the political or the intellectual class, you can hear that the Jews are not directly responsible for spreading the infection, but that today the Palestinians are endangered by that. They suffer because they never had the opportunity, according to this version, of organizing basically in a word, because they are oppressed. This is the key word. Like so many other sectors in the international society, in the international community. Here, the aim is basically a moral delegitimization of the State of Israel, and it reverberate through international Jewry. Palestinian Media Watch, for instance, has shown us that the war around COVID-19 in the Palestinian media is closely connected with the delegitimation of the existence of the State of Israel itself. Yet the accusation bring back the basic issue of illegal occupation, racism, apartheid, colonization, ethnic cleansing, which are spreading widely. These charges can become effective and dangerous and throw a shadow on the morality of all the Jews all over the world. The EU, and here I come to the way of fighting this situation, is certainly right when it helps the Palestinians combat COVID-19. It gave it more than 120 million euro. It did well when they do it, but why does it not make this aid conditional on stopping the most vulgar forms of anti-Semitism? Anti-Semitism is certainly the major topic of discussion in Europe today. So why hasn't the EU addressed the Palestinians and the Iranian regime's insistence on blaming the Jews and also the United States for COVID-19? As conspiracy theories grow, they pose a danger to both the State of Israel and to the Jewish people as a whole. Action, therefore, must be political because the action is political, by identifying the responsible and hitting them with the laws and the consequence of the law, despite the coronavirus pandemic. It has never been so clear that anti-Semitism, according to the 3D definition and the IHRA definition, is presented in this new form of the legitimization. There is nothing legitimate in blaming Israel for COVID-19. It is anti-Semitism, pure and simple. And in order to fight it, we must identify it more than ever with the fight against the anti-Israeli slander, which dominates public discourse, and anti-Semitism. Therefore, when the intention of combating anti-Semitism is real, and institutions have a real intent to stop it, International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, IHRA as you say, definition of anti-Semitism is certainly useful, but it has to be used as a weapon and not as a prayer, as it happens in many nations that have adopted that. Funds and help cannot be distributed without dangerous, active anti-Semites, even if we want, and we do want to help them fight against the virus. They can be stopped. I'm almost through. This new anti-Semitism threats the life of the state Israel itself, and it's very important to underline it. It undermines not only Israel's national security, but also the international support it needs in order to ensure its political, economic, and military freedom. The first threat is to the national nature of Zionism, to its necessity, and puts into question the very existence of Israel. The second is to the political, economic, and military freedom it needs in order to defend itself. Therefore, there are no excuses tied to the confusion and fear of COVID-19. The Jewish people can again be delegitimized and considered deplorable in the name of the virus. This includes questioning its right to a state and moreover to its self-defense. The consequence of pandemic, look, must never be underevaluated. I suppose many of you have read about it all along the centuries because we read a lot about pandemics in this day. An epidemic can change the course of history, bringing with it the devastation of broad social, scientific, economic, and strategic changes. It has already happened in the 14th, in the 17th, in the 19th, and in the 20th centuries. It is worth today to invest in countering its effect on anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism.
Thank you, Fiamma. Thank you very much. So we have many people with us today, and if anybody would like to ask a question to Fiamma, please write to me and I will read your questions to Fiamma. So Fiamma, thank you very much. It was a thought-provoking presentation, an important presentation. So I would like to ask you, you outline the deep-rooted anti-Semitism in the Palestinian Authority. You mentioned Iran, and we know that this anti-Semitism that's part of the Palestinian Authority and Hamas and the Iranian Revolutionary Regime and other Islamist regimes comes from European anti-Semitism, which was fused with political Islam. We know the origins of this ideology. And yet in European circles and Western circles and I'm being very general, so forgive me, but in the intellectual milieu, in the media of record and important journals and newspapers in Europe and in North America that you know very well, The demonization of Israel and the delegitimization of Israel has been a part of the political and intellectual landscape in the West for many years.
Mhm.
And I would argue, and I think you would agree, that the demonization of Zionism in Israel was sort of acceptable in so-called progressive intellectual circles.
Mhm.
And now with the pandemic, economic and political and even social stability could become threatened. The extreme left, the extreme right, and political Islam is growing in this moment of fear. And my question is, Iran and the Palestinian Authority have been very active in recent weeks, blaming Israel, as you point out, for the pandemic and using conspiracy theories. What sort of threat does this have to European society, for the stability of Europe, to allow these type of anti-Semitic tropes that are being used by extremists that are attacking the political center of Europe? Is anti-Semitism dangerous for Europeans? Because the Israelis are strong and they could, I think, defend themselves well. What do you think could happen here in Europe if anti-Semitism and these conspiracy theories go unchecked?
Look, Charles, that's a very important question. I think that anti-Semitism in Europe can really be, in this particular moment, extremely dangerous for the Europeans in general and for the European Union in particular. The European Union in these days is at the center of a very tough and harsh discussion about its moral fundament, because it has not been able, and it did not want at the beginning, be of help to the several nations that were asking for help, having been hit harshly, like Italy, for instance, has been by the coronavirus. So the discussion about Europe nowadays became much more than in the past a discussion about its moral value. You can imagine how important this can become and how tough the attack on Europe can become at the moment when one of the main reasons why the European Union was born, which is to put an end to the disaster of Nazi fascism that brought Europe into the Second World War and to the murder of 6 million Jews, will be put into discussion by the fact that anti-Semitism is rising all around. And this is exactly what has been happening all along these years. We have had several waves of anti-Semitism that have expressed themselves even with a very murderous attitude of terrorist attacks that have been spreading all over Europe. It's a long time, from the time of Rue de Copernic. So we have had it going all along, and it has really captured the mind of many people that at the beginning refused anti-Semitism because they saw it as morally unacceptable. But the moment when they had the impression that through BDS and through other civil human rights platforms, it could be ascribed to the moral intersectional attitude of all the people that consider themselves oppressed, then this has been a disaster, you know, and this can become even more a disaster at the moment when it will be nourished and fed by all of these theories of conspiracy that, as I told you, cannot be accepted by the main authorities and officials because they are unpresentable, unacceptable, but then can pass fluidly through the river of anti-Semitism that has become so large and so powerful during this year. Europe can be destroyed definitely by that, together with the crisis of coronavirus. I see it like this.
So very briefly, we have many questions, so I don't want to take up too much time. But given the onslaught of the Iranian revolutionary regime's use of anti-Semitism in recent weeks, they had a disgusting cartoon competition promoting conspiracy theories about the virus, anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Do you think the European Union and European governments are taking a strong enough position against this anti-Semitism? Should they be threatening to have more?
Not. The answer is no. They are not taking a strong position. What I suggest now are two things. First of all, if there are helps, let's take Iran, okay? I don't trust the Iranian power for nothing. They will lie and they will use the money that will be given to them to help to help Iran against coronavirus for other aims, which are aggressive, imperialistic, anti-Semitic aims. So first of all, I am totally against. It's a long thing to explain, but I will just condensate this in these two sentences. So my advice is to be very careful if you want to give money to Iran. And a way to test the possibility of doing that is just to put them under a very conditional request. Just to say that, that the responsibility of the spreading of the coronavirus has been connected to the poor attitude of your government toward the pandemic, as every European government are saying today about themselves. Each of them blames themselves for what's happened. And this is the good thing. I mean, because when you blame yourself, then you are good enough to correct your mistakes. The Iranians keep blaming international conspiracies. So first of all, if you give help against international conspiracies, of course you have given money against nothing, because they don't exist. So this is it.
So we have a question from Cindy Berman, and she asks, recently the United States gave a grant of $5 million to help the Palestinians combat COVID-19. And do you think that they should stop giving this aid because the Palestinian Authority is using anti-Semitism?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think that we have to stop helping the Palestinian Authority. If you read about the story of the Palestinian Authority, you will realize all along the long history of the relationship with Israel that there are always several parts in the Palestinian Authority. Unfortunately, the leadership has always been the one that that has been blaming Israel, the occupation, which is like a mantra that they repeat all the time, on Israel as one of the worst things that a human being can do it. But this is not all the Palestinian Authority. And there are two reasons why we should not stop to help them. First of all, they are very close to us. We live with them. We are together with them. So of course we will help them. We have to. And I hope that one day they will be able to say thank to us. I really hope so. I'm not sure, but and then again, you should put them to test. There is a simple way. You just ask them to take their responsibility, to tell them how they will manage the money, who will manage the money, and to put them under supervision. And please, you ask Shtayed, Abu Mazen has disappeared. You know that we don't see Abu Mazen anymore since a long time. Somebody says that he is sick. Somebody says that he is simply old and tired, and people really don't want him to speak too much, and they prefer Shtayed now. But this is another story. Now you must ask, therefore, the responsible in the Palestinian Authority to declare clearly that there are no responsibility of Israel and of the Jews in spreading they must renounce this blood libel, and then we can help them, and we must help them, and we are doing that. So it's a good idea to help them.
Good. So we have a question on a similar topic from Dan Diker, your colleague from the JCPA.
My colleague.
Colleague, yeah, and he So Dan's asking, it seems that the Israeli government must show a no tolerance policy to Palestinian anti-Semitism, which has been masked in the West as legitimate criticism. What should the Israeli government and the Knesset do more effectively to combat?
The Israeli government should make a turn on that. You know, zero tolerance is exactly what we need. It has never been used all along these last 25 years because Israel was always hopeful about a peace process that never took shape. Now we know that this is not possible, that a compromise with the Palestinians has always been denied by the Palestinians themselves, and therefore we must not allow them to keep saying the bad things that they have been saying and to take the bad actions that they have been taking, for instance, promoting the BDS that has a very strong connection with terrorism. And as Dan can tell us, because he has written at length and plenty about this specific, very important subject. And so if I can suggest something, it's just this: we have to be more sure and more proud about what Israel has done to make peace with the Palestinian on another level, on the economical and the cultural level. All the Oslo process is dead. So the moment when we stop dreaming about it, that will be the moment when we ask the Palestinians to do the right things.
Okay. Also, so we have another question now from Andrea Levin from Camera from Boston. She thanks you for your excellent presentation. And she said that you said because anti-Semitism has a political purpose, it has to be fought at the political level. This relates as well to the media coverage, which is also grossly lacking. If leaders speak out their commentary and actions, they have to be reported. They have to be reported, which magnifies the impact. Can you comment on what leaders should be doing to sort of to fight the messaging, the anti-Semitic messaging that is being covered in the media? So in other words, if a political leader says something anti-Semitic, the media will cover it, spreading the anti-Semitic tropes.
Well, first of all, Andrea is the best in commenting this, I'm sure, because the camera work is an incredibly useful and great work, not only to understand what is going on, but also how to counter that with the right considerations on that. This is what they do, and this is my answer to. This is what must be done. So the press, I'm a member of the press since immemorable time, always have to report to what is true, okay? So if they say something bad, of course, we have to report them. But then an answer must immediately come. There must not be sympathy or even, we must not consider them as innocent children saying stupid things, shtuyot, you would say in Hebrew, just because there is confusion and the COVID makes their mind exaggerate and confuse. No, they must be kept responsible. So, for it's really very important what has been done in America by Donald Trump, because with the act that he has promoted, just making the IHRA, effective. When you promote anti-Semitism in the sense that you accuse Israel in a way that it denies its legitimacy, you are responsible for that. You are a newspaper, you are a new university, you are a professor, you are responsible for that. And then when you are responsible, there are consequences to that. They can be economic consequences, there can be simply the fact that the press will denounce you and say that you have done a mistake. This is exactly what camera, for instance, does, and this is what has to be done.
Okay. So now we have a question from London from Dorothy Van Hooswick, and she asks, what role do you think that the occupation plays in the lives of those who live in the Gaza? And what role do you think that the Israeli government should play at this time with COVID-19 in Gaza?
Echo, I think that as we are doing today as Israel, Gaza must be helped because they really have a very bad situation. We send plenty of trucks day after day through the passages. I think more than the Egyptians that are on the other side of the map. Never forget, Gaza is not connected only to Israel. It's connected much widely to the Arab world. And usually all the help, the doctors, the nurses, the medicines, the money comes from this side. Either we let it pass or we give them to them directly. What is the influence of the occupation on Gaza? Gaza is not occupied. I'm sorry to remember that, but we do not occupy Gaza since 2005, and it's really a very long time. And since then, the occupiers of Gaza is the Hamas government, which is a terrorist Islamist government that oppresses its people and use them as cannon meat. I'm so sorry to say that. And if today they did not progress in organizing a society. It depends all on its terrible leadership, which is a leadership that is corrupted and murderers.
Okay. Now switching back to Europe, Harold Rhodes asked the question, could you elaborate on the European right-wing pro-Israel political parties and even governments, which are also domestically anti-Semitic? How does this play out in this sort of time of lockdown? The economy is frozen, people are fearful. Will these pro-Israeli governments have a negative impact on the European landscape?
Look, there are right-wing government. Like the Hungarian, the Austrians, but they are not anti-Semite. I have to declare it very clearly because, there was a group in the Hungarian parliament, Jobbik, that was really anti-Semite, was heavily anti-Semite. They have been totally marginalized, and they belong today to the opposition. Now, with this, I don't want to say that the right wing doesn't have the problem of anti-Semitism. Yes, they have. Yes, they have the problem of anti-Semitism. There are groups of neo-Nazi. There are in Germany. There are in Germany. There are in France. There are in Italy too. There are anywhere all over the European panorama where Nazi fascism has grown in the past as an important regime that almost occupied all of Europe. So we still have these. We still have groups and fringes, but about the governments, I work on it all the time, and it would be better if Orban could stop discussing the politics of Soros all the time. I would appreciate that. It would be better for everybody because it's not so relevant, and it's a pity that he does, because whenever he does it, this really becomes a flag of anti-Semitism, which is used by the anti-Semite, because Soros you can judge him politically the way you like, but he's certainly a Jew. So when you go and examine the other politics in Hungary, you will not find an anti-Semitic drive. You will certainly find anti-Semitic groups. And as I said in my lecture before, this anti-Semitic group must be fought. They are anti-Semite, for sure they are. But they are not dangerous because the general consensus, the important consensus, the European Union, the United Nations, the relevant officials and the relevant intellectuals too will always be against them. They will always be against them. They will condemn them. They will put them out of the consensus, and also because Europe knows, as you, Charles, underlined, that Europe will go to its own destruction the moment when it embraces anti-Semitism, and so they will never do it. What is the really dangerous is the other side of them, because it's the side of the oppressed. It's the intersectional. It's the intersectional movement against oppression. That is the really dangerous anti-Semitic movement that certainly includes also the Islamic movements that has always been put out of the radar of the European Union, that did not want to consider that, with great damage.
So before COVID-19, there was more concern that was beginning to percolate. The ADL was reporting, the AJC was reporting, FBI and other security forces in Europe were looking at the rise of right-wing nationalism and racism and the reemergence of xenophobia in American political discourse and in European political discourse. In the UK, the extreme elements of the Brexit movement were very nationalistic and xenophobic. There were those type of tropes being circulated. Now with COVID-19, do you fear the rise of right-wing anti-Semitism and nationalism and xenophobia? Germany was beginning to look at the stockpiling of weapons by extremists. Do you think that this sort of moment will exacerbate those tendencies, or you're not so concerned?
Takes two different things. One is the extreme right group wings. I am afraid of their physical actions because they can shoot, and this is just all I want to say about them, because they have done it mostly in the United States. So they really are dangerous. They are certainly dangerous. We must put a lot of attention on that. But they are not very many, and yes, you have to consider them, but not as a mass movement, and certainly not as dangerous as all the other movements that I mentioned before. I don't want to go back to that. About nationalism, for sure, Europe had to realize that Europe was not helping them, and that they had to say, as Italy said, we will do it by ourselves. Well, look, Israel long time says we are doing by ourselves. And this is not hyper-nationalism, is not fascist nationalism, is not right-wing nationalism. It's just the love for one's own landscape, family, culture, political and cultural environment, and I like it. I mean, I don't consider that right-wing nationalism. I consider that love for your nation, and it's a completely different thing. People has identified love for your nation and fascist nationalism because of the past. Because in the past, nationalism became Nazi-fascist nationalism. But nowadays, we know from many studies and many texts, include the good one of Khazoni, that it doesn't work this way. It's different. We will have, with the after the pandemic, to reconsider. When I say we, I say the European. Israel is already a national state and doesn't have the problem of being more or less nationalist. We are as nationalist as we need. This is what we have to be. This is the Jewish nation, and we survive just because we recognize it and we fight for them. And after 3,000 years, we came back to our country, and this is what we are, and we know that. So Israel is out of this discussion. It has a very nice right national point of view, defending itself. About the other nations, they will have to reconsider nationalism out of the idea that nationalism is fascist nationalism. Doesn't have any relationship with that. The fascist nationalism, as Khazoni says, is imperialist nationalism. The fascist nationalism and the Nazi nationalism and even the communist nationalism were imperialist nationalisms.
Okay, thank you. So now shifting gears a little bit, we have a question from Dr. Rami Aziz. Rami will actually be speaking with David Patterson on Wednesday at our webinar. So
Great.
Rami is writing from Rome, and he's asking, how can we convince European governments that anti-Semitism and hate speech against the Jewish people should not be treated as an aspect of against freedom of speech in the West? So in other words, what's the balance between condemning and trying to stop hate speech, but allowing freedom of speech to flourish?
Look, first of all, about convincing, you convince the people that want to be convinced. So you must make them want to be convinced, and you can make them want to be convinced with the way I suggested before, just considering any help or consideration or inclusion conditional. You have to consider that conditional. And so the Jewish state has to do it for defending all the Jews all over the world, and the same has to be done by the United States, which is our best friend at the moment. And this has to be done at the United Nations, at the European Union. We people, the relevant powers have to go there and tell them, look, you are anti-Semite when you say this. You are delegitimizing the mere existence of the state of Israel, which is, and it's written in the ICRA that you have adopted, that you will not do it. So if you do it, we will have to put it under our attention and sanctions. That's the way you have to do. You have to act forcefully. That's the only way you can do it.
Okay, thank you. So, and Robert Hassan, the director of ISGAP in Rome, in Italy, he asks a question from Rome also, and he's asking you, do you think there's a danger in Italian universities that the peoples are becoming less sensitive and maybe impatient, not so patient, with Jewish faculty and students who want to commemorate the Shoah, that they think they're too particularistic? And is there a possibility that the Italian in Italian universities, the faculty and Jewish students will become attacked like they are in the United States, where the pro-Jewish and pro-Israeli students and faculty are under attack? Will this happen, do you think, in Italy?
Look, when you look at the polls that have been spread by several institutions, you can see that actually it's true what Robert says, that the wish of knowing the history relating to the Shoah is not so much spread. There are many people that do not even know how it happened, and they know very vaguely that it happened. So, of course, this is something that we must keep doing to try to teach, to try to tell the story. And having said that, I'm not sure that we will succeed. And actually, I think that I look at Italy, for instance. Well, also the office of the President of the Republic and so many other institutions do their best to make the Holocaust be known. They organize a trip of the memory trips of the students. They teach the Holocaust. They print more books. And of course, this is something that has to be continued and done. But as Jewish people, nowadays, we have to understand that it will be easier to convince an institution to go and commemorate the Holocaust than to say a good word about the state of Israel, and that we have to point our attention and to make the biggest effort nowadays about this issue, because this is the most important, because the life of the state of Israel, with this, I actually certainly do not want, actually I will say something personal. My grandparents were killed in the Holocaust from the Polish side, and also plenty of uncles and I am a second generation and even third generation, and the most that the year go on, the more that I feel it, and the more that I read, and the more that the subject is close to me, and I feel like I really want to communicate this to my children. For sure I want. Having said that, I feel that now we are on a struggle field. We are on a struggle field, and this struggle field has at the first place the state of Israel. Memory is very important for the state of Israel, but the most important thing nowadays is to make people know the truth and to make them understand that anti-Semitism is actually the legitimization of Zionism and the legitimization of the state of Israel. This is what we have to. This is our main struggle today. I don't know if ISGAP agrees with me. I'm sure there are many opinions in the ISGAP, but I feel it as the main duty of a Jewish soul today.
The main, to do what? To
fight the struggle of the state of Israel nowadays.
Yeah, well, I would argue, yeah, they're interconnected. The demonization of Israel is having an impact on diaspora communities, as you know. And apropos of this, there's a question from Yossi Cooperwasser, and Yossi is asking if you could please comment on the different ways that anti-Semitism is spreading in different European countries. And are there differences? And if there are differences, why? This will be the last question.
Look, certainly there are differences. In France, there is a lot of anti-Semitism. I mean, it's not that the COVID-19 is changing the map. The map was different even before. And unfortunately, what I have to say is that the countries where anti-Semitism is more spread today are the countries where there is a largest presence, the largest presence of Islamic immigration. I'm sorry to say that, and I say this not for any sense of. I don't feel any sense of satisfaction in that. I just say that this is well known to the European Union since a long, long, long time, when Romano Prodi was the president of the European Union, and he just gave the commission for a poll on the European public opinion. And when there came out that the issue, the main issue was this, he did not reveal that this poll existed, and so we remained for some time in the dark. Now this thing is becoming clearer and clearer. But Belgium, France, Spain, these are the countries where this is very good. Guarda, Luca, I receive now the news.
17 hours.
Go ahead.
What?
Go ahead, Fiamma. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
So there was a transfer of 50 million shekel, 500 million shekel to the Palestinians, and they suspended it at the moment because of this terrible anti-Semitic propaganda from the side of the Palestinians, and it looks exactly as if Israel. I did not know that at all when I started speaking here, but it looks exactly as if the only way to try to ask them to stop with what in Hebrew is called the asata, with this anti-Semitic spreading of lies should stop to permit a friendly commitment to the health of the Palestinians. If Israel understands that, I wonder why the Palestinians should not.
Right. So that's maybe a positive note to stop on. It's good. I think, in my humble opinion, it's good that the Israeli government took a stand. And perhaps if the Israeli government takes a stand on this disgusting anti-Semitism, this dangerous anti-Semitism, we could also ask other countries in Europe, for example,
That's
who are
my
dealing
opinion.
with Iran, that maybe they should also take a similar position and stop this incitement to hatred, and which is an attack on democratic principles and basic notions of humanity and citizenship. So Fiamma, thank you so much. Before we end, I just want to, of course, thank you for participating and for sharing your wisdom with us and your insights. On Wednesday, we have two excellent scholars in 2 days. Professor David Patterson will be speaking along with his student and my colleague, Rami Aziz. They're going to be speaking about medieval anti-Semitism and its relation to the modern anti-Semitism. Rami Aziz just finished, I think, the most definitive work on the Muslim Brotherhood and radical Islam in Europe, and that will be published in the next few months. He just finished his doctorate. So we will have their insights with us on Wednesday. And I guess the final comment and word is, in about 1 hour, I would urge everybody to join the commemoration of Yom HaShoah at Yad Vashem. We sent the link. You can participate via Zoom and participate in the very important commemoration today of Yom HaShoah. So everybody, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for your incredible questions. And Fiamma, thank you so much for your analysis.
Thank you very
All
much.
the best. Bye. Thank you. Thank you.